Karine Jean-Pierre fields questions from the press on the balloon. Lot to put together here, including a timeline. Recall that Joe Biden said that he ordered this thing to be shot down on Wednesday. This was the president speaking after he got off of Air Force One. The balloon had come down. U.S. fighter jet shoots down Chinese spy balloon, is the Chiron from CNN. And the president had something to say as he deboarded.
Briefed on the balloon. I ordered the Pentagon to shoot it down on Wednesday as soon as possible. They decided, without doing damage to anyone on the ground, they decided that the best time to do that was as it got over water outside within the 12-mile limit. They successfully took it down, and I want to compliment our aviators who did it, and we'll have more to report on this a little later. Thank you.
Mr. President, what did you say about China? What's your message to China?
You were saying the recommendation was from your national security.
I told them to shoot it down.
On Wednesday.
On Wednesday.
But the recommendation
They said to me, let's wait till the safest place to do it.
What does this mean for China, relations with China?
Yeah, because the Chinese were there meeting with them, and they said, well, we better just let it ride. Now, something else was interesting on that trip. If you notice, this was a screenshot. Apparently, Biden was getting off the plane, and he was hanging out with this fella right here, having conversations with old Hunty Poo. Hunter Biden, the smartest man that Joe Biden knows, is literally traveling around on Air Force One with the president. Current president doesn't really know where he is or really what he's doing, but his son sure does, and his son is there. And his son, conveniently, has a ton of experience with China. He had all sorts of business deals over there. When he flew over there on the vice president's plane and met with all the Chinese. So it's very convenient. They have a lot of capabilities now together. Great duo for America. That's probably who's really running things out there. So the media comes out. Karine Jean-Pierre is asked about a lot of this. And as usual, she provides answers as only Karine can. Asked about the Chinese balloon. We want to know what the timeline looks like. Here's a question from the media. Karine responds. This is when she gives her pre-recorded talking points, and then she explains what the timeline looks like, and let's see if we can follow it along.
The administration officials said that after the balloon was shot down, there were communications between the administration and their Chinese counterparts, kind of detailing maybe rationale and the why. Can you talk about how you guys are thinking through the next steps in this relationship, given the cancellation of Secretary Blinken's visit, and obviously what seemed to be a pretty brazen act over the course of the last week?
So look, our approach with China has been pretty clear, and we've been very clear about this, and it will continue to be calm, resolute, and practical. That is not going to change on how we're going to move forward with our relationship with China, with our diplomatic conversations as we move beyond this. The president has been clear. We have been and will continue to keep open lines of communications with China. As you mentioned, Blinken and Jake Sullivan and many others have continued those dialogues, especially after last week. In fact, like I was mentioned, there was multiple levels of conversation about their surveillance balloon, and again communicated directly with China after we took our action to bring the balloon down. So again, multiple channels of communication that will continue. China's, we believe, irresponsible action were visible for the American and the world to see. Not only that, at the same time, a second PRC surveillance balloon was seen traversing in Latin America.
Yeah, they want to come from the north and the south. Two fronts. That's how you do it in the games.
That's one thing that you all reported, and it's up to China to show it is serious about its words of being a responsible country, that it wants to build on the meeting that the president had with President Xi very recently. And so it's up to China to figure out what kind of relationship that they want. And as you know, yes, Secretary Blinken did postpone his trip. It was not canceled. And when the time permits, we'll see that trip back on the books. But again, it doesn't change our what we are trying to do and how we're trying to move with China. It's up to them.
And then, just one more. On Saturday when the president spoke just off of Air Force One, he seemed very definitive.
It's hard to actually figure out what that means. It's up to China. Okay, the Chinese have said that they're kind of upset about this. I guess they're reserving judgment. That was the statement that we read through in the prior segment, they said, well, we have the right to respond and we're going to reserve that right. And we're very upset about this. And this was just a normal civilian airship. And you could have just sent it back to us, you know? And then we didn't do that. So we'll see, I guess, if they're going to escalate, and our official position is we're going to wait and see. It's up to China. China's like, well, I guess we're thinking about it. So are we just in a holding pattern now?
Making clear that he was the one who said explicitly, I want this to be shot down. Military leaders suggested wait.
So this is a question about the timeline. Karine's going to walk us through the timeline in detail. Let's listen.
Spoke just off of Air Force One. He seemed very definitive in making clear that he was the one who said explicitly, I want this to be shot down. Military leaders suggested wait. Was that a reflection of perhaps some frustration in terms of the political attacks you guys have gotten from Republicans who said this should have happened on the front end as opposed to the back end?
Well, just a couple of things. I know there was a TikTok that went out to all of you from the National Security Council that was pretty detailed on how...
A TikTok? Did she say a TikTok?
Well, just a couple of things. I know there was a TikTok that went out to all of you from the National Security Council that was pretty detailed on how everything kind of broke down for the past week and how things flowed. I'll give a little truncated version of that. On Tuesday, the president, through the National Security Advisor, Jake Sullivan, directed the military to refine and present options to shoot the balloon down immediately. The president also directed the...
Did she say TikTok, or is that something else? Is that something else that I missed? Is that another? Did she intend to say something else? Is that another name for a intelligence memo? A TikTok? Here's what I'm trying to ascertain. Are they sending out national intelligence briefings about Chinese communist spy balloons on the Chinese communist spy app? What?
I know there was a TikTok that went out to all of you from the National Security Council that was...
National Security Council, pretty detailed TikToks going out with all the TikToks. What?
Republicans who said this should have happened on the front end as opposed to the back end?
Well, just a couple of things. I know there was a TikTok that went out to all of you from the National Security Council that was pretty detailed on how everything kind of broke down for the past week and how things flowed. I'll give a little truncated version of that. On Tuesday, the president, through the National Security Advisor, Jake Sullivan, directed the military to refine and present options to shoot the balloon down immediately. The president also directed the military, the intelligence community to collect against the balloon so that we would learn more about China's capabilities and tradecraft. At the same time, we protected against Chinese intelligence collection because we knew exactly where the balloon was going. The military recommended taking the balloon down over water, following the determination by military commanders that there was undue risk of debris causing harm to civilians while the balloon was over land in Alaska, Canada, or the continental United States. On Wednesday, the president directed the military to take it down at the first available opportunity when it could be done with safety, especially as we're thinking about Americans' lives and being safe there, while maximizing our ability to recover the payload. Shooting the balloon down over water wasn't just the safest option. It maximized the chance of recovering the payload, giving us a better chance to get information from the Chinese surveillance balloon.
All right, this is horrible. Can she just give us the TikTok? Does anybody have the link to the TikTok that we can just watch rather than this explanation? I'm sure it was much better.
Payload. But I think the bottom line here, and this is something that we want to make very clear, is that, look, what China did was unacceptable. We protected civilians, and we gained more intel while protecting our own sensitive information. And so I laid that out so you have an understanding of how this past week went. And, you know, the president, as we all know, is not just the president, he's also the commander-in-chief, and his number one priority is making sure that American lives are protected and that we protect, citizens in this country. But at the same time, we wanted to make sure that we were able to collect some data, which we were able to do, and that's why we took that
That's
action.
Such a lame excuse. Oh, gosh. So the same thing that Ned said. No, by the way, when they were spying on us, we were spying on them even harder, by the way. America, you're welcome. We got all sorts of data. They could have gotten that anyways, right? I mean, you could have taken it out in Alaska, for example, and you could have gotten the whole thing. You could have done something differently and landed the thing, right? Or done one of the cool things that I told you to call Tom Cruise. And Harrison Ford did that thing where he was ziplining across the airplanes in the one movie. So, look, they could have done something else other than let it meander around for a whole week. And to turn around and make this whole thing twist on they're happy they got data out of it is a very, very poor excuse and justification for their actions here. So we're going to continue on with Karine because there are additional questions that came in from the media, including, hey, Karine, how much have you guys damaged your relationship with China now? And this woman wants to know how there could be other possibilities of other balloons from the Trump administration that he didn't know about and that we're just finding out about now. She's kind of shocked. This is kind of a weird thing for you to tell us about these new balloons. But first, let's talk about being healthy, because when the Chinese invade, we all want to make sure we're strong, healthy, and well. And so let's talk about our friends over from Field of Greens at Brick House Nutrition, because of course, we'd all like to drop some of those leftover holiday and pandemic pounds, but how sick are you of these weight loss pills and fad diets and all the books and all that stuff? Been there, done that. They don't work. You know what does? Eating 5 healthy servings of fruits and vegetables every day. You do that, and the weight would probably just fall right off. But vegetables, not a fan. Who has the time to prepare for all of this fruits and veggies every day? Let's talk about Field of Greens instead. Field of Greens is a science-backed formula of specific fruits and vegetables that you're not going to find in any other product. Proper nutrition reboots your metabolism so you burn calories, lose weight a healthier way, and faster. And Field of Greens is the only brand backed by a better health promise. You're going to look healthier, feel healthier, but the great proof is going to come at your next checkup when your doctor says, wow, you've lost weight, you look amazing. Whatever you're doing, keep it up. It starts with Field of Greens. Let's get you started today. 15% off your first order. All you got to do, visit fieldofgreens.com, use code Robert, and save 15% off your first order. It is a real organic superfood. It's delicious. It tastes great going down, and it makes you feel healthy and vibrant. And you can get it over at fieldofgreens.com with code Robert. And now we turn our attention back over to Karine Jean-Pierre. The media wants to know, all right, Karine, now that you allowed this balloon to mosey around through our country and then decided to take it out of the sky, what has this done to the relationship between the United States and China?
How much damage would you say has been done to the U.S. China relationship because of this? And do you expect the president to bring this topic up in his speech tomorrow night?
Look, I will say this, as we know, when it comes to State of the Union speech, foreign policy is always a topic in that speech. I'm not going to get ahead of the president and what he's going to speak to as it relates specifically to China. I just laid out at the top that it is going to be up to China. It's up to China to see how they want to see this relationship moving forward. And so
I don't know what that means.
Let me ask you one broad question about this.
What does that mean? If it's up to China, China can do whatever they want. I guess we're going to wait and see. Are they going to send more balloons? Are they going to declare war? What's going on? Who knows? But the White House was really trying to cover over their misdeeds by turning around and blaming Trump and prior administrations. We covered earlier the story that they said that there were several different incursions when Trump was president. Ratcliffe and others have denied that, but the White House needed somebody else to blame. So he did it too. He didn't handle this well either. But the question is, well, if there really were balloons floating all over the place back then, why are we just learning about them now? And what's your plan with future balloons?
Thank you, Karine. Thanks. Is this the first Chinese balloon that the U.S. identified flying over U.S. airspace under this administration?
So what I can say is that we have talked about the China's balloon program. We have generally on this, the Chinese surveillance balloons program has been around for some time. We even briefed Congress this past August. So I don't have any specific on any other balloon during this president's administration, but there has been a program that has been in effect. We have kept Congress abreast on that. But I don't have anything more to say or to share.
How is it possible that this administration discovered at least 3 previous balloons that flew over the U.S. under the previous administration, but Trump officials didn't know it was happening.
Yeah, how is that possible? It's a real great question. You guys came out and you said there's like balloons flying all over the place. They never heard about that. Did you find those extra balloons next to all of that extra leftover inflation and illegal immigration going on as well?
Yeah, so look, I think that, and we have talked about this before, about how when the PRC government surveillance balloons transited the continental U.S. briefly, at least 3 times, as you just mentioned, during the president's prior administration.
This is rough.
And once that we know of the beginning of this administration's, but never for this duration of time, as we know. This information was discovered prior to the administration left, but the intelligence community, as I said, is prepared to give briefings to key officials. But this is something. Post. But this is something that they were not aware of, as we've just laid out. But again, we are ready to brief key officials to let.
So how are they not aware of it, but you're aware of it? They were looking at different data. Like, did they have a different dashboard? Did they forget to check that inbox? Like, oh man, that email account, I forgot about that. Oh, there's a whole different command center over there. I never even opened that door. You're kidding me. Oh, that makes a lot of sense. Well, gosh, wow, that would have been useful for those last 4 years. We would have been able to see everything up there. Well, all right, we better hopefully nobody finds out we weren't in there. That'd be kind of embarrassing.
Them know what the intelligence community was able to figure out.
You can share about how you became aware of it. Like, did you? Is there? I just don't. Did you go back and look at some?
So I'm not.
They got a memo from Jim Baker, ex-Twitter, ex-FBI. He sent him a memo. Michael Sussman wrote it too and said, "Hey, don't forget about those balloons. Remember those balloons? Remember those Trump balloons that Christopher Steele brought over with him? You remember those, don't you?"
I'm going to get into intelligence community information from here. That's not something that we do from certainly from the briefing room. What I can say is that we learned of this, the 3 prior during the past administration, and so we are willing to share that information. But again, just not going to get into intelligence from here.
Of course not.
Question on this: since the administration was aware of the balloon program, did any U.S. officials have conversations with the Chinese about balloons over U.S. airspace during this administration?
Yeah, if you knew about prior balloons and you saw another balloon is incoming and you say there's another balloon coming in South America, Latin America, what are you guys doing? Like, do you have a balloon strategy in place?
We're not going to get into specifics of private diplomatic conversations we have with China. We're just not going to do that from here. We've been very clear that what China did was indeed a violation of international law. You've heard directly from Secretary Blinken making that very clear. And China knows that that we will vigorously defend our homeland and sovereignty. That is something that we've also made very clear. But we're just not going to.
But not that vigorously, though. Only kind of vigorously, like moderately vigorous. All right. It's going to be sort of like, I don't know, maybe not even really that vigorous at all. Just sort of like average. Okay. It's just kind of just going through the motions of self-defense. Vigorous would be, all right, you're about a mile away from our airspace. Just understanding if you cross 1 inch across our perimeter, China, it's not going to work out well for you. And at that moment, right, before they actually cross, that's when you call the Chinese ambassador in or whomever they were meeting with at the White House. That's when you get on the phone. That's when Blinken says, you better turn that balloon around, buddy boy, or else this trip is off, okay? And there's going to be serious repercussions. But they didn't do that. So all of this vigorous talk, it's not very vigorous at all. It was vigorous after about 7 days or so, but not preceding that moment. So not a whole lot there from Karine. We also heard about the Trump people being briefed on this. Question came in from the media on this. All right, well, you said that the Trump people knew about other balloons or had other balloons or some other situation. Can you tell us what you're going to do with them?
Topic in the wake of the balloon operation, NSC, the administration has said that it's going to brief members of the Trump administration on that. Can you give us a list of which Trump administration members would be eligible for that briefing? I mean, is former President Trump eligible, since the president had previously blocked him from getting classified briefings after he left office?
So as we mentioned, and you heard my colleagues from the from NSC, that we are prepared. The Intelligence Committee is indeed prepared to offer key officials, as you were just laying out, from the Trump administration on the briefings on this PRC surveillance program. And so we're not going to get into who are those key officials. From here, I would refer you to the Intelligence
Ratcliffe, Pompeo,
on those
Esper,
logistics on
who
when
else?
it's going to happen, and
Trump, all of them denied
who
it.
those key officials would be. But again, we are prepared. We are willing to have that conversations, to do the briefing, but just not going to get into the specifics of who.
And third topic.
So we'll see if they get briefed, if there's this new revelation that maybe the military complex did know about this, but they didn't communicate it to Trump's head people, right? That would be a scandal in of its own making. But the final question came in to Karine from this gentleman in the media. We are through this current balloon catastrophe, all right? I know it was a very traumatic experience for many of us, but all right, we're through it. Great. Chinese balloon is down. They handled it like incompetent idiots, but it's done, right? It's over now. It's finally the end of the deal. But what happens if it reoccurs? What happens if China just says, well, all right, that was pretty successful. We got everything we needed before they took it out. I don't know, send another one. Should we send another one? They seemed angry. Not that angry. Did we get everything we needed? Yeah. All right, send another one. If that happens, Karine, what are you going to do about this?
Behind you.
Thank you. So, Karine, we know of these few balloons that had flown in the past, the one, of course, from last week. You say the relationship is up to China going forward. Should the expectation be for the American public that this is it with balloons then? Or is it that this could potentially happen again in the future? And if that's the case, that the standard procedure going forward is wait for it to get over water and then it'll be shot down?
I'm not going to get into any specifics of what might happen next or hypotheticals from here. I'm just not going to do that. What I can say is, as you've heard me say, there was a China surveillance program, right, balloon program that we have that has been going on for some time, that Congress certainly was briefed on back in last August, but just not going to get into hypotheticals from here.
And then one more. There's bipartisan calls up on Capitol Hill as it relates to TikTok and the national security implications of it. You have Congressman Ken Buck saying, if you see this CCP surveillance balloon scares you, wait until you hear about TikTok. Senator Michael Bennet had recently called on the CEOs of Apple and Google to remove TikTok from their devices, from their Google Play stores and Apple Play Store. Does the administration believe that TikTok is a national security threat, and does it believe that those apps should be removed from phones?
No, they're sending national security briefings on them.
So look, the president, the Biden administration, more broadly, has never allowed TikTok on the White House devices. Other federal agencies have similar restriction. We have been clear about our concerns on apps like TikTok. And so, look, we are focused on the challenges of certain countries, including China, seeking to leverage digital technologies and Americans' data in ways that present unacceptable national security risk. I'm just not going to get ahead of it. As we know, there's a review currently happening, but we take this very seriously. And as I said, the Biden administration has never allowed TikTok on the White House devices.
Is it a national security risk?
Again, I'm just not going to. There's a review happening by CFIUS. I'm just not going to get ahead of that.
Thanks, Karine.
All right, so the spy balloon is flying overhead. The spy app is still embedded in 100 million Americans' cell phones, gobbling up the data. But Congress is turning their attention to it. Karine doesn't have many answers for us, but they are still responding to this, and we'll see if the Chinese respond or how the White House modifies their posture in the coming days. We'll, of course, continue to follow.